Alright, this is Piexplode. Welcome to the latest episode of XYUMS, the XYUMS metagame series. Now this one I'm going to talk about the poultry of the metagame. This is our birds. Notably, I'm going to talk about Ho-Oh, Reshiram, Shaymin-Sky, and Mega-Blaziken, which are four Pokemon of varying potency within the Ubers metagame. Now, I'm going to start off with Ho-Oh. When the metagame sort of started out at the start of XY, everyone felt that it was one of the absolute best Pokemon in the metagame, and it's still pretty good, but it's nowhere near as hyped as it was now. People were running Rock Arceus a lot more to beat it. That being said, it is still very strong. The most common set is a choice band set, where you run Adam to maximum attack and then balance between the health points and the speed, usually running about 40 speed or so to speed creep other Ho-Ohs and other base 90s such as Groudon, Dialga, and even slightly higher base speed ones such as Landorus T, Gliscor, and Defensive Yveltal. The general moves that you run are quite simply Brave Bird, Sacred Fire, Earthquake, and Sleepwalk. You literally don't need any other coverage on top of that, and being able to check Darkrai as a Sleep Absorber is a very helpful trait. Doesn't work so well against Brillium since that often carries Rock Tomb though. So yeah, that's Ho-Oh. It's very bulky. It's a great tank, especially with Regenerator, but you always have to carry a Pokemon that can handle Stealth Rocks very well with it. So Cloyster can work pretty well, as can Defog Arceus. I tend to think that other Defoggers probably aren't reliable enough for Ho-Oh. But that being said, it can still function with slightly weaker Stealth Rock support if it's allowed to be threatening enough. And it does get quite a few free switches, but it isn't so strong against defensive teams. It works quite nicely as an anti-lead to Hyper Offense because it's not likely to outspeed any Pokemon on their team. And it's bulky enough to take a Psycho Boost from Deoxys attack without worrying too much, as well as having the opportunity to burn it, in case to stop it from doing anything more than laying Stealth Rocks. There are other sets, but they're a lot rarer and they're not really as good. But a defensive set, typically you only run physically defensive Ho-Oh if you're running a more defensive spread. And those can run moves such as Substitute, Toxic, and Whirlwind, as well as Roost, which is mandatory on any set lacking a choice band. Don't use Choice Scuff Ho, it's fun but it's not good. So yeah, that's mostly Ho-Oh. I quite like it defensively. It works pretty well on stall-based teams because it handles Stall 2 pretty well, since it can hit it hard, and whilst it can be taunted, it can't be burnt. So the ability to threaten that, as well as being able to burn it, allows you to force it out. Indeed, I think it works quite nicely as Substitute or Whirlwind set paired with Klefki, since that can paralyze it and allow Ho-Oh to handle it. In fact, that works well with most Ho-Oh sets. The only thing left to discuss is probably Flame Charge on it, which is very rarely run, to be honest. It's just not all that good. But, always worth a shot, trying new things. In terms of beating Ho-Oh, Rain helps, but note that physically defensive Kyogre's not a great set, and its Brave Bird isn't resisted by many Pokemon. That's what you need. The very rare electric types, which is mostly just Zekrom that you rarely see, although I like Mega Manectric. Those tend to handle its Brave Birds better. Rock Arceus is an obvious go-to choice. Heatran is highly recommended, although the ground weakness is quite poor. Tyranitar and equally Diancie both enjoy being rock types as well, allowing them to sponge the fire and flying type attacks. But the weakness to Earthquake doesn't help at all. I don't think Tyranitar really tends to last all that long anyway, so that tends to work better on offensive teams. It only really works on defensive teams whilst Tyranitar is still here. holding a Chocolate Berry, and Operating Pursuit, which is really its best niche on stall, apart from Sand, which isn't. Well, Sand in itself is done better by Hippo Down, but Extra Dill has bad synergy. So yeah, Hippo Down for Sand stall, Piranitar for Sand defense. But that's sort of the case. That sort of isn't. That's a bit of a sidetrack. Anyway, the other birds that we mentioned, Mega-Blaziken is a truly powerful force. It has one set, but it has 3 variations essentially. The 5 moves that you'll see run on it, or 6 moves, are Protect, Sword Dance, Knock Off, Flare Blitz, High Jump Kick, and Low Kick. The very standard set that I generally recommend is Protect, Sword Dance, Flare Blitz, and Low Kick, since that allows you to wear down your checks and counters, which is what makes Blaziken a very good Pokemon. But running Knockoff instead of Protect or Sword Dance does 2 different things. If you run Knockoff, then that allows it to revenge kill more stuff, but it doesn't allow it to really sweep, except for very late game when Pokemon like Glandorus T are taken out. But if you pick off Protect, then you've got a Pokemon that destroys almost all stall, unless they carry one of a very small selection of Pokemon, those being Gliscor, Quagsire, Hippowdon, Salamence, Gyarados, and Gliscor, really, which can all be worn down as well. So yeah, very strong Pokemon. Low Kick is generally recommended over High Jump Kick. I mean, although High Jump Kick hits Manaphy, which you don't see, Quagsire, Diancie, and something else, I can't even remember what else. Yeah, it doesn't hit much anything more hard than Low Kick does, but it does have the added risk of the 10% miss chance, which is very costly, as well as ghost types being able to play around with you a lot easier, such as Giratina Origin, Ghost Arceus, and Aegislash. So yeah, that's how Mega Blaziken works. That's what you should be running. The Baton Pass set is simply a set I've never tried. It's probably got the advantage of surprise factor if you ever use it, since Blaziken actually can take a hit once in a while. But yeah, generally its best option is being a revenge killer on variations of balance and defense that doesn't require having to use a choice scarf and can also double as a sweeper or can be pretty versatile and difficult to cover. And then we come to, I'll mention Shaymin-S now, colloquially known as Skymin, which is a Pokemon I quite like. And you'll see if you ever watch my battle in the Ubers Premier League finals, I used a not very good team, but I did have a Shaymin-S in that carried Grass Whistle. I do not recommend this move, but in tournaments a move like that can change things around if you desperately need it to. But it's very unreliable and it usually can be running something better. So its main sets are the Choice Specs, Choice Scarf, and Subseed. Subseed probably being the best. Choice Scarf can outspeed Geomancy, Xerneas, and virtually every Pokemon you're ever likely to see, but it doesn't hit very hard. But Clutch, Air/Flinches are never a bad thing. It just doesn't offer much synergy at all, since whilst it has the ground immunity, it is still weak to rock and 4 times weak to ice, although it takes electric neutrally, which it doesn't answer any threats defensively. Likewise, the Choice Specs set isn't too bad because you get to threaten default balance and stall much harder with that set, threatening with very powerful air slashes or seed flares or occasionally earth powers, but it's not a Pokemon that often sees use because it does offer just such poor synergy. It doesn't really add anything apart from threatening more defensive playstyles incredibly well. And then Subseed is probably best because it does do just that, and it does so very well, and it's harder to just outright take it on with a switch-in. Yeah, a really lovely little Pokemon actually, but not very good. you always want to run maximum speed and special attack. Timid if it's not Choice Scarf. I don't know about what you'd run on a Choice Scarf set. EV wise, it would be very similar. Just check out the analysis which is linked in the bottom for any of these Pokemon to understand more about them in Smogon's new beta Pokedex. And finally Reshiram, which is it's not a bad Pokemon per se, it's just incredibly difficult to build with because again it's a Pokemon that doesn't really feel any niche. It hits insanely hard, particularly in the sun, but then again you've already got Ho-Oh as an option for that, which does it better. I mean, you could pair Ho-Oh and Reshiram together. The Toxic Roost set, I understand, works quite well, but again, it just offers no synergy. Whilst Fire offers you neutrality to Fairy, that's not terribly helpful, since it doesn't help you with Geomancy's Xerneas, and it does give you a Stealth Rock weakness, as well as no answer to Kyogre, unlike Palkia. So, if you can find a use for Reshiram, I'm impressed, but it doesn't really offer anything. And it is bait for ground, rock, and water type attacks, as well as dragons and fairies. Still, once you get it in, it hits very hard. So, yeah, those are those for Pokemon. That's a look at some more poultry attackers within the Ubers metagame. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode and learnt a lot, and are ready to try out these new things that I've told you about. Oh, that sounded really fun when I said that, didn't I? Have fun! Yeah, have fun. It'll be better when Shadow Tag goes, I promise.